Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Shane and I'm delighted to be joined by Sascha Bierendonk, Change Consultant at Silverside in the Netherlands, who will be talking to you about insight into sales meetings done smarter, meeting notes with Microsoft Teams and OneNote. Remember to join in the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is ESPC18. Don't forget to check out the Resource Centre. This is packed with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. Simply visit sharepointeurope.com/resource-centre. Also, Thursday, September 27, 2018 is the closing date for the European SharePoint Office 365 and Azure Conference Early Bird Sale. Book now and save. See sharepointeurope.com/pricing for full details. After the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any question you have for Sascha in the question window. Some questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and will be added to the Resource Centre, where you'll be notified by email when it is available. And now it gives me great pleasure to hand over to our webinar presenter today, Sascha Bierendonk. Hello, Sascha.
Hello, Shane.
Hey, how are you today?
I'm good, and you?
I'm great. Okay, so I can see your screen. Take it away.
All right, thank you very much. So, hello everybody. Thank you for joining me on this webinar. Delighted to get the chance to tell you a little bit about insight into sales meetings done smarter, which I actually did at a client called Omron Healthcare. I've been working with them for a while on the adoption of Office 365, and I'd like to share this scenario with you, how it helped them to achieve what they needed. A little bit about myself. I am a consultant, change consultant, and I work with clients always to improve getting out of the tools what they need to do them work smarter, generally called user adoption. Got a lot of experience with several national and international clients, and my focus is particularly on the user adoption, which is also the goal for my company, Silverside, an ICT delivery company, but we also focus strongly on the user adoption. We believe that the adoption, the actual effective use of tools is one of the biggest challenges today. So we help organizations to become a more collaborative business. Today I want to focus on a little bit about how I approached this smarter meetings, using our PACE change methodology, using a productivity scenario kind of template. Then I'll introduce you really into the actual scenario, smarter sales meetings for Omron Healthcare in EMEA. And I'll actually show you how we implemented the Teams and OneNote setup. And one of the focuses on this scenario is also how people are having to get used to a new way of note-taking. So these are the topics that I would like to get into. But before I actually dive into it, I'd like to get a little bit of an understanding of my audience. So maybe you want to answer this first poll. If Shane can put the poll up, that'd be great. Maybe you want to answer this first poll. Are you familiar with working in Microsoft Teams?
So the poll is running now, Sascha. We'll just give it a few more seconds. How about that?
Sure.
Can you see the? Oh no! Can you see the poll, Sascha?
I cannot see the poll, but
okay, I can, and I know the audience can. Okay, we'll give it maybe one more second. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll. Okay, so just let you know that 48%, 50% are coming up with number 4, advanced, use it regularly, 25% on basic, 17% on expert, and 8% on somewhat heard of it. So
Okay, so it's kind of fair to say that this is mainly a group of people who are actually working quite a bit with Microsoft Teams. That's good to know, so that I can adjust a little bit of my my presentation to that. So maybe also have the same thing. The other poll would be: are you familiar with working in OneNote? In any kind of way, not necessarily meetings, just the tool itself. So if you want to put that up as well, Shane.
Yep, so that's going now. And we have approximately, still going, we'll just give it another second or two. We have 5% are on somewhat heard of it, 14% basic, 41% advanced, and 41% expert.
Okay, so I'm dealing here with a group that's not completely oblivious to the use of Teams in OneNote. That's good to know. Thank you for answering that. So I have one more question. That's not necessarily a poll that you can answer, but maybe before you actually started this webinar, you already had some specific questions in mind. If you do, feel free to put them in the chat. Then I can maybe ongoing have a look at them. Obviously, you're also welcome to do it afterwards, but if you already now feel like, oh, I'd like to see this question answered, then please let me know in the chat if you feel like it. I'm just going to keep an eye on the chat to see if anything pops up. So, but feel free to post a chat message if you have a question that you need answered now or later on in the webinar. So let me explain to you a little bit about how I at Silverside approach organizations and teams who want to improve their work. We do that with our PACE methodology. It's a change methodology. So we apply 4 steps: the prepare, the activate, the change, and the enhance phase to actually get people going. And we found that there is a very big need to have this kind of change approach, because the speed of change in tools, and particularly cloud tools, and I think even particularly Microsoft tools, is so fast, so high a pace, that people are just not being able to keep up. They're having difficulties finding out what tools to use or how to effectively use it. So this is why we came up with our PACE methodology. And what we are actually trying to solve is the following. Maybe you've read the book by Mr. Freeman, Thank You for Being Late. And I'm going to share with you a little bit of what the issue is here with trying to keep up with the pace. Because today, the pace of technology is, and this is not a scientific line, I'm just drawing it by hand, the pace of technology is actually accelerating in massive speed, so much faster over time than maybe a decade ago. And the pace of human adaptation is actually not going as fast, not such a steep line. So what is going on? We are actually here now. So what is going on is that there's a gap into what technology can do and what people can actually keep up with. And of course, I'm not speaking about people who are in IT. I'm sure if it's your focus of your work, it's easier to keep up, of course, with the speed of technology. But I'm thinking about all these employees at businesses that are using Office 365, are starting to use Office 365, who are not primarily focused on IT. They're more normal people as compared to IT people who love IT. They just see it as a necessary means, and so they can't keep up. So what we need to do in order to help people make up with that gap is to make it easier for them to adopt the new tools. And that's what we do with our PACE methodology. And the goal is to help our customers with the first 25% of people using the tool. Because recent research, actually a couple of months ago it came out, recent research showed that after you reach in any kind of population with any kind of change, after you reach at least 25%, you will get higher adoption rates from then on. But it's a critical number to reach. So what we do in the first stages of our PACE approach is trying to help organizations with the earliest groups that tend to adopt new technology to reach the 25%, and then to help them with a lot of online tooling on more of the later groups who want to adopt Office 365. So how does this PACE methodology and this number relate to this scenario, smarter meetings? Well, it's quite simple, because we tend to help organization in choosing the technology for specific scenarios around 3 different areas we call me, we, key. We see all these Office 365 tools either belong to a me or a we or a key area relating to either personal productivity tools or for day-to-day collaboration that people do in teams, in groups, or for more structured, formal information that is key to the whole organization. And within this division of these 3 areas, me, we, key, for either personal work, teamwork, or organization knowledge and work, we see that people can have different scenarios that they want to use the tools in. And this is how it relates to the number 25. And let me just flip back to the slide, and to the earliest groups that we serve in our first steps of our PACE methodology for change. Namely, that we start with the earliest groups to form a specific productivity scenario. So here we have some general productivity scenarios that we have lots of materials for, but we also, of course, help people to rethink their actual work in their specific situation, making these general productivity scenarios a bit more concrete. So what we do, let me flip back, was too fast, is helping people to change the way they work now into the way they work new, until that feels completely normal again. They're very accustomed to it. And we do that using these scenarios. And at Omron Healthcare, that has offices spread all across EMEA, they felt the need to have better organizational insight into meetings that their salespeople did with customers or resellers of their products. They're making healthcare products, so if you ever had your blood pressure monitored, you've probably had an Omron device around your arm. So what they wanted is that the salespeople who talk to customers directly or the resellers of their products in their meetings, they wanted to get more insight across all of these meetings, between all these teams, across all these regions and countries. And obviously, people tend to do their work in the way they've maybe always been accustomed to, they've done for ages. So what we try to do is have a look at, okay, so now you get these new tools, Office 365, for something that you are doing already. So how does that work for you? What are the problems that occur to you? And this is something we do with these earliest groups. This is not something we do with the late majorities or the laggards in the Rogers adoption curve that I showed earlier, but this is what we do in the first stages. So what we did is we built the exact scenario that I'm going to show you now. And when I'm saying build, I'm not saying technologically build so much as more of a practice of how to use it. So I helped them with the first groups to sort of design this scenario, which also incorporates a lot of different new ways of working. So I wanted them to shift from the way they work now to the way they work new. And the way they work now meant using a lot of different apps. Some people would probably use Word, some would even use maybe Notepad, others would probably do it in Excel. Of course, also a lot of people are still using paper-based ways to take notes, which were also stored, of course, in various locations. Sometimes when they wanted to talk to their customers or each other as sales teams, they probably would have used email for all the conversations or discussion or information sharing. And the information would probably be shared mostly on different file shares. In this case, with the client, it was called the P drive. And particularly also with sales, we tended to see that they kept things stored on their hard drive of their laptops, because, you know, then I've got it with me all the time. So what I wanted them to do is start doing meetings in a new way. That meant that I wanted them to start sharing in one central place where they could all access the same information. but where they could have the Teams chat, a conversation for talking to one another, with possibly the support of audio video meetings, and using the OneNote application for preparing and both doing the notes during the meeting. And even though it may seem not such a hard thing to do, it actually is quite a change for a lot of people. But the scenario at least gave them a bit of good grip on what should I change in the way I do my note-taking currently. So what we did is we set up teams for this scenario. The scenario for getting more insight for sales meetings across different regions. So we set up one team, you see it here in this image, OHE Customer BP Meeting Notes. We said, okay, we have one team that all the salespeople can access. There's owners and members in the team. The owners are the people who wanted to get the better, bigger insight. So this was actually something that was started from the center of excellence at the client. So they were thinking about, well, how can we centralize things so that it's easier for a few people to get insight into everything. So everyone can access the whole team, but we did set up a channel within the team for each region that they have divided their organization in for salespeople. And each region has its own channel, but also we made sure that we have separate access to the meeting notes for each region and also the files in each region. So the chat and the channels are visible for everybody in the whole team, but per channel we set up access for limited groups of people, particularly for the files and the OneNote notebook. Each channel obviously has a conversation, which is there by default, and files, but we added one for a meeting note tab for a OneNote notebook that was linked to that channel. So it was actually also limited in its access by putting it in the files of that channel and limiting the access further. I'll show you in a minute. So one team divided into 5 channels for the 5 regions with separate access to the conversations, sorry, not the conversations, for the files and the meeting notes. So you see here that one of the meeting notebooks in the Germany Northwest Europe channel is put into the files section there to help us give separate access. And they could also use this to store further files if they wanted to use that generally for sales presentations. So how we set up the access was by going into each folder which is there in the library and make it into a unique permission that limited access to owners only for each channel and a separate group for people that can access that particular notebook and those files. Resulting in working from OneNote only, so this is all done in the setup with the earliest group, resulting in access to the meeting notebook only if you belong to that specific channel. So here you see an example of the meeting notebook that was linked to the Germany Northwest Europe channel, which is also the Germany Northwest Europe notebook. And you see that we have divided it further. Each channel's notebook is divided further into section groups and sections, and of course pages. So what you see here in this screenshot is that for the Germany Northwest Europe region, we have several section groups: Austria, Benelux and Switzerland, export and Germany, and within a section group there's different sections for either countries, depending a little bit on the region and the setup in the region locally, either again countries or sometimes directly customers. When it's countries, we'll have customers grouped as the pages. So we set up this whole team and the OneNote notebooks with the earliest group of people, with a select group of people, thinking about how can we make this smarter, how can we make it easily accessible for this smaller group of owners who don't need to go all kinds of places to get insight. And then of course we also trained all the salespeople on how to use this Smarter Meetings, Teams, and OneNote, which is the later groups, the late majority. And what we did is we didn't just do a training moment, which we did live, either with people physically there, but because of the spread across EMEA, sometimes even with a salesperson working alone from their home, for example, in Poland. We also did it by webinar, and we provided them with a lot of information also within this team for Smarter Meetings, so they didn't need to go anywhere else. So we also set up a wiki for a manual on how to do the meeting note, how to use the tools. And I created 4 how-to videos that they could use for reference as well. So we've integrated it into the team's general channel, where under manual they could find the wiki, and they could find 4 how-to videos, obviously uploaded to stream and then linked here as a tab, so that they would always have it available for reference, also for new salespeople. So the setting up of OneNote, I already explained a little bit how we did the section groups and the sections. The setting up of OneNote was indeed 1 notebook per region, with section groups and sections and then pages. And that wasn't actually the hardest part. What I found the hardest part was for people to do this new way of note-taking. I found that they weren't experienced in thinking about how you could do notes differently than maybe just write them on a paper thingy that you take with you, or using Word. Particularly the habit of using Word for note-taking is one tough nut to crack. So we try to help them along, give them feedback right within the team when I saw them doing things. Sometimes they did things wrong because the tool was unfamiliar. Yeah, so I had to really help them change the way they learn. I see also that I have a message from Shane. Yeah, if you want to, we can do a question in between if you want. That'd be fine.
Sure, Sasha. Okay, so I have the first question here, because I have a customer who wants to implement a newsletter type function within their department. What can you recommend in terms of teams and applications available in it that I can look at it rather than a SharePoint communication site, or is the communication site the best solution?
Okay, that's a big question. I guess it also depends a little bit on the type of organization. I do see the point, though. I think you're referring to either a SharePoint communication site, or maybe using Teams, which is maybe a little bit easier for people to use. It's easier to set up probably than doing it through SharePoint. Yeah, so I guess it depends a little bit on the type of organization, how big the organization is, whether you need a lot of formal stuff, because I would say using a communication site would be in the key area. If it's more of a we thing, I think it could work using Teams, setting up different channels for different types of news or different groups, if you like. So I guess it has a little bit to do deciding, are we talking about a we area as I described, or are we talking about a key area? Sometimes maybe the line isn't that perfectly clear, but that would be my my approach first.
Okay. Do the end users need to be logged into their 365 accounts to view note tabs within the Teams application?
Well, you need to be logged into Teams with your Office 365 account, and then everything works right from there. So that would be enough.
Okay. How do you keep the size of the notebook reasonable, thus to avoid that it becomes slow if syncing locally, or long load times when opening?
Well, I guess we managed it a little bit because we set up the meeting notebooks basically split up in different notebooks. So it's not one huge notebook for all the salespeople across EMEA. There's 5 for each region, so that's already splitting it up a little bit, even though physically they're easy to access from this one team. And we've also, and I'll show you in a minute, we've also set up some sort of templates to do the meeting notes. Maybe also thinking about limiting the size of the meeting notebooks.
Okay, here's a good question. How did you break the habit of end user note taking on paper?
Well, I think one of the main things that we were lucky to have is that this was something that was initiated a little bit from the top. So the need and the urgency and the support came from the top. So it's easier actually when you do have that a bit of executive support. Their need was to have it centrally digitally available to get better insights into the meeting notes. So that sort of made it obligatory, but we all know, of course, that you can never force people, because they could still do it on paper and then put it into the OneNote. And that's actually what I've seen happening, that people started doing it on paper and then started writing it in OneNote. So basically doing the exercise twice, or starting in Word and copying it to the OneNote. So the only way to break that habit is actually to keep pushing, to keep trying, to keep showing the benefits of it, and to keep demonstrating them how easy it is to do. But it does require sitting down with people several times and showing them how easy it can be. So what I noticed, I mean, I'm now presenting on my own laptop, but they were actually having another laptop, a ThinkPad that can flip so that it becomes a tablet. And there's actually a pen hidden inside the laptop. What I found, for example, is that people wanted to do the manual exercise. So one of the things you can focus on from switching to paper is how a touchscreen enabled laptop that they have can actually help you in having the same experience with the inking that Microsoft does nowadays, making it very, very similar. So yeah, I also try to focus on that, which actually hardly anyone knew, that they could flip that thing, that it had a pen, and that they could use it in such a way so that they felt like doing paper, but they were doing it digitally.
And would that be sufficient enough? There's a question here, to use tablets with pen to write minutes.
I'm not sure if I understand the question right.
So if they're using the notepad and they're using the tablet with a pen to write minutes, yeah, would they be using it at that level?
Yes, they are. Some of them are using it at that level. Others are still typing into the OneNote, and obviously both is fine. But I did see that for those who had a need to handwrite, basically, initially on paper, this does help them get across this hurdle.
Sure. Next question is, if you set unique permissions in SharePoint, do you see a risk to administrative members or permissions in the long run?
Yes, of course. There is a risk. So we, apart from me having set this up, we also have somebody else trained on how to do this, so more than any of the other salespeople who can actually do this. So we also have a training and a process for doing this. You do need to constantly make sure that the proper access is granted.
Okay, and the last question here is, how do you share information between the channels when needed?
How do you share information between the channels, and then you said?
When needed.
When needed. Well, they can share information between the channels because the conversation in all channels is accessible to all. So that's easy enough. I mean, you can't even limit it as far as I know. So I could go into SharePoint library and limit the access for each folder that is represented as the channel, thus making the meeting notebook in that folder also limited accessible. But the conversation is open in each channel to all. So that's where they can actually also talk to one another.
Great. Okay, thanks, Sasha. I'll keep you updated if more questions come in.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for those questions anyway. They were good questions. Yeah, so we were talking a lot about getting people away from their habits. One of the things that I've also been trying to get them to do is work from their calendar and integrating the OneNote already in their meeting, making it even easier when you're going to a meeting to quickly access the link to get your meeting notes. And we all know probably that we can easily access or link a meeting notebook right from our calendar invite, as well as we can also link to a team. The other thing we did, and this had to do with the answer also about maybe limiting the size, what we did is we made a standard template page for each meeting based on how they could also achieve their goal of getting better insight. If we still use the same different methods, but still all use one notebook, the goal obviously wouldn't be achieved either. So another need was not to just have free form notes being taken. So we wanted people to adhere obviously to the structure within the notebook and put the notes in the right notes pages in the right section and section group. But we also wanted them to always start with the same information for the meeting, such as the name of the company, the business partner, obviously the date, location, but also the purpose of the meeting and the attendees from both the client and Omron to get better insight, and to also add the agenda points here so we can also get insight into our people across EMEA using the same agenda points. So we use this template page that I put in the meeting notebook here, because it's hard to provide a template page right from within a team for each individual's OneNote. So they had it available here and then could create it as their own template page. But we put it in here just as we did a guidelines tab in each section and section group. Again, there's a guideline tabs on how to add meeting notes and the template readily available there. So they had to fill in the same things. And we also said what you need to do is before the meeting, you fill in these things, the details of the meeting and the attendees and the agenda. And during the meeting, you actually go through each agenda point and write down what discussion was happening, and also what agreed actions by whom and when need to be taken. And here we also try to show them how using the insert menu in the notes can help you with creating things like the person card, or adding dates, or even in the previous slide for the date that you can automatically add the dates. You can automatically add tags or flags for information if you want it to appear also in your Outlook calendar. It's really easy to write down here an agreed action for a person responsible, and that person creating a flag out of that so that it becomes a task in their Outlook as well. But we have a total of all actions visible in here. And one of the things we wanted them to do after the meeting is maybe make a summary of all agreed actions so that we can keep track of this list, which is also, again, the pre-work for the next meeting with that same client to see if all the action points have been done. Another thing I pointed to them, which people actually really love, but hardly anyone is familiar with, and you know, all people in the IT business probably know this, but using the OneDrive Sync client on your OneDrive client on your mobile device, you can actually take a scan of a whiteboard or a flip chart and have it saved automatically to your OneDrive, and then obviously easily integrate that into your meeting notes as a picture if you wanted to also share it with your meeting notes. People really loved the scan functionality on the OneDrive app, and particularly for salespeople, having one of those mobile apps really made a difference for them to really adopt this scenario as well. So let me recap a little bit. So what I did is, with a smaller group of people, really wrote out the scenario in the format that I showed earlier, where I asked them, how will it help you? What issues will it solve? How are you going to do the process? And how are we going to do the technology? What are we using for what? So we developed the scenario together with the earliest groups, a smaller group. Then later on, we managed to put into the team directly already all the manual information in a wiki and the how-to videos, so that the early majority and the late majority both have access to the information to keep an eye on, oh, how should I do this or how should I do that? So we've provided support through these videos, the manual in the wiki, but also actually being available for people to ask questions or doing a real training with the same people in the room, helping them really practicing this scenario. So I think I mentioned a few of these things, but some lessons that we learned from this group and this smarter meetings scenario is the word file habit is hard to break. I mean, in general, I think in changing the way people work from the way they do it now to the way they do it new with all the Office 365 tools, files is a hard habit to break anyways. I mean, people just love their files. And I see even in the wording when they come to me and they say, but how do I create a folder? Or how do I name this file? The habit is so in files concepts, files and folders and name giving, that they find it quite difficult to see that sections or section groups are basically the same thing, but you don't call it a file. Sometimes even I found that they were actually attaching the Word file with a note into the page. So they would actually start in OneNote. So what they did is they copied the template page and pasted it in Word and then started filling it in and then copied it all back into the OneNote. So that's a real tough habit. And I think that is just a matter of time, because the folder thingy and the files habit, it's been going on for ages, right? I mean, ages. I think thousands of years we've been thinking about putting things into folders or kind of structures, whether it be vases or cabinets, and naming it in such a way. And OneNote, of course, is different. So first of all, we have the team that they had to get used to, but more, I think they had to get used to OneNote. We were already using Teams in different scenarios as well. And OneNote is actually fairly new. And I find you either see people in organizations that already have seen OneNote, probably maybe on their private PC or something, or at school, and they love it and they use it for everything. Or people are just completely unaware of the whole application, even though it's been around for a while, right? But I do also see that once they understand it, and they understand that it's not like Word, that you can just actually scribble the way you want to, the way you're used to on a OneNote notebook, and that you can use dictation these days, that you can speak to your OneNote and have it written down, or that you can draw and convert shapes. Once they actually get to that, and how they can do that even with their hands, which is proven that it actually makes you understand things better. The brain is wired in such a way that using your hand and inking is actually easier for people to grasp information. So having them see all these things and then slowly getting accustomed to it, I think people are starting to love OneNote. And also another thing that I saw was people just don't really understand their laptops well. I mean, there was a day quite a while ago when I was just giving people Windows training. And that doesn't happen anymore. And I'm not saying that we should go back doing that, but I do see that that people are just giving these new tools, and IT, I guess, just assumes that they know how to use it, when in fact that their laptop that could flip backwards to be a tablet, or even when it's just like a laptop, that you can have, that it has a touch screen and that you can have a pen, that they didn't even actually know that it was stuck in the laptop, that they are just not aware of it. So that does mean to me that I guess something needs to be done there as well. One other difficulty that I find people see is making the distinction between all these Office 365 apps being available as a Windows app, from the Windows Store, for the Windows 10 devices particularly, or a desktop app. So let me just name it as an example. We have OneNote as the Windows app. We have OneNote 2016 for now as the desktop application. We also have OneNote Online in the browser, and we have OneNote Online in Teams. That is confusing to people, and it's not just, of course, regarding OneNote. They have it with many apps, of course, in Office 365. People find it hard to grasp it. Sometimes it flips to the browser, sometimes it goes there, sometimes it goes there. Obviously, we also have the mobile app, but that seems to be less confusing somehow, because I guess it's on another device and it makes more sense. So I do see that with all the differences also in its functionality, obviously, you need to sort of give them a preferred route. So I tried to stay within Teams as much as we could. So, for example, if you wanted to use page templates, you'd have to go to the OneNote desktop application. But if you just want to do the basic stuff, I would give them the preferred route of doing this scenario, go into Teams, use OneNote Online in there, because it feels to them like only having to use one app. But there are always different sideways that people want to take using the other apps. But focusing primarily first on one way to go, I found is best. So I hope you've been given some insight in how we approach this scenario. Obviously, if you have more questions, please feel free to ask them. If you want to give me a question now, Shane, that's fine.
Sure, yeah. So first question up is, did you link Outlook invitation information to the meeting notes? For example, attendees and subjects?
Not by default in the template page, but I did provide them with training how they can do that for themselves. Yes.
Okay.
I must say there's one difficulty at this client for that though, and that is that they are already using Office 365 but are not using Outlook yet for the most of them. So their migration from IBM Notes to Microsoft Outlook still has to happen. So that made that obviously a little harder to accomplish.
Okay. Next question, Sasha. When designing this solution and working from your customers' requirements, what alternative solutions did you consider? For example, Workplace by Facebook.
Not. We did not consider any alternative solutions in this case. Not because I have a preference for one or the other, but the situation was already when I came in, we are going to move to Office 365. We're going to implement Office 365. And in my opinion, I always prefer to use what you have rather than look elsewhere initially. And this suited their purpose fine.
Okay. What had you done to improve user adoption besides training videos or webcasts? Were there other activities like active marketing?
Not specifically around this scenario. I mean, for the Office 365 implementation in general, there was more. We are also using the internet and a Yammer feed also integrated in the internet to communicate. So we did use that, and we also had some people who were already using the smarter meeting notes in this way be a reference in the story to their other colleagues as well. So we also had a small interview videos that we shared through the internet so that others could see what their colleagues found of this scenario.
Super.
But I do believe it's important to do other things just than training and manuals.
Yeah, for sure. Another question, what were your biggest blockers when implementing this solution?
I think the biggest blocker is probably that the organization has made a decision not to allow external sharing, because I also heard some of the salespeople say that they wanted to include, especially their resellers, more also in the meeting notes, that they would be able to share it with them. And we're just not allowed to do so. So that's been a decision to not allow external sharing on Teams and OneNote and OneDrive.
Okay. Another question is, what is the measure of success for the project?
I don't think there was actually set, so there's not much I can say about that. So I guess it's more of a feel thing for them, that rather than they have actually set some measures that they could see if they've been made.
Okay, and the last question I have here is, what level of ongoing support are you providing for the project going forward?
Well, I'm also in their office 2 days a week, not just for this scenario, obviously also other stuff that I'm doing with them. But I am basically available as their colleague, so they can always contact me. And there's also another person from within the company that, like I said, is also doing more of the management of the team. So I think the best way for people to get their questions answered and get some help is having someone to talk to, and I find that very valuable. So I'm just there, and they know how to find me, and I sometimes push in their own team to ask for questions, or I refer to things I see them doing in not the right way and give them tips. So I think it's actually the best way to enhance from here on.
Okay, there's a comment here, so it's not so much a question, so more a comment than a question, but I feel guest access to Teams is vitally important in collaboration, so the organization are doing themselves harm not allowing third-party access. What do you think?
I agree with that. I agree with that, but unfortunately, that's not up to me. This is an organization that is also, I'm talking about EMEA now, but it's actually a Japanese worldwide organization. I guess they have a bit more of a command and control culture. So yeah, this was just not an option.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Okay, Sasha, that is all the questions that are here at the moment.
All right.
Are you complete, and is there anything else you want to run through, or is that it?
Yeah, just let me run through a few more slides. Just want to point people maybe to where they can find more information, and then I'll give it back to you.
Sure.
All right. So in case you feel like you want to learn more from stuff I've done, we've got some information available either in ebooks or in our page shop, or on the SharePointEurope.com website, or maybe you even want to meet me in Copenhagen in November. So maybe if you want to, you could have a look at these ebooks that you can download for free, that are telling a lot about how we do our adoption, our PACE methodology. Or maybe you want to have a look at some of the materials that we have for other change agents in our shop. You maybe want to have a look at or talk with me how we managed to do the support through online videos. Maybe you want to have a look at some of the stuff I wrote for the SharePoint European SharePoint conference on their website. But of course, preferably, maybe you want to meet me in Copenhagen. And that's it for me, Shane. So if you want to wrap things up.
Sasha, thank you so much for your time today. Very much appreciated, and always wonderful to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here.
Great. Okay. That's all for today. A big thank you to Sasha Bierendonk for her fantastic webinar today. See SharePointEurope.com/register- for webinars for further details on all upcoming webinars, or visit our resource center at SharePointEurope.com. Thank you all for joining me today, and have a great day. Thank you and goodbye.